Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. That means it's another week of Nebraska Preps Postgame with Jacob Padilla, one of the best in the business, and I'm just along for the ride. ODB, man. Another week, a lot of hoops. Fortunately and unfortunately, I kind of like when we're in the same place. But we still watched a lot of different games because you obviously have to have the coaching dynamic. So that's always good.
And there was one game where we were both focused in on this weekend, ran into each other for first time this season. I have to say it's a lot more fun watching your team than coaching against them, but that was a fun one.
They're a handful. And I felt like, you know, it's like the kid said, and in particular, you know, Caleb in the car, you could just, and I'm not just saying this because I'm working with you, because I'd rather be right than well liked, right? That's what I tell people. He goes, you can tell they're well coached, right? That's a team, especially when you cut it to 3 and we get off to the slow, sluggish start, and you were taking care of the ball better early, so we couldn't control tempo. We weren't really sharing it very well early either. I didn't like some of the shot selection. And you guys can flat out shoot the basketball. Like you have some guys that can put the biscuit in the basket from distance.
Yeah, for sure. And it's right off top of it. We're talking about the River Cities Hoop Summer Tip-Off this year, kind of the always the beginning to the summer here that OSA hosts. It's typically kind of the biggest like local tournament. Most of the local programs are in it. The Nebraska and Lincoln Supreme teams were down in their own event down in
Cape Girardeau.
Yeah. I think a couple of the powerhouse teams were elsewhere, but OSA, Hoffman's, ICE, and the D League teams, Fremont and Norfolk, kind of they only play in July. So first chance to see them. So just a lot of local teams, obviously ETG. So that was kind of this weekend, and yeah, it was a fun time. I guess probably start talking about our matchup. I'd start with the 17U division, and fortunately, division had no champion. Your team and mine, we played in the semifinals. We're talking about you guys got on us early. We battled back. I think about 3.5 to go. It was about a 6-point game. We had a look from 3. It missed. You guys went down, knocked down 4 threes in a row, and that was ball game. But yeah. That was a fun one. Again, you guys are the best team we've played this year, I think. And I was proud of my guys in their effort. We weren't super polished this weekend. Obviously, first weekend back. Didn't quite play like ourselves, I think, throughout the weekend, but we found ways to win. Our first 3 games, they were all competitive, all close. And then we gave you guys a good battle in the semis, I think. On the other side, it was ETG handled Team Factory.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how easily that game went? I would have probably leaned towards Team Factory, all things being equal, at tip. But as that game wore on, it was never really close.
Yeah, I didn't get as obviously we were busy at the same time, going at the same time. I didn't get to follow how exactly it played out. But credit to the ETG 17s going undefeated. They had to play with 6 and 7 all weekend, kind of depending on the game. And then I think in that semifinal, they had a couple guys get banged up.
Maljol was developing some tender knees, and Connor Milliken, I took a look at it right after just to see, because we were obviously going to maybe get ready to play that 2:30 game. So, I just took a look at it. He had some swollen stiffness around his right calf. It had swelled a little bit. And you could tell the skin was stretched pretty good. So I don't know if it was, it's obviously fluid, but I didn't exactly know what from. And so they could have easily been down to 5 because Maul wasn't going to go. And I felt like he was a guy that made himself a little bit of money.
Yeah.
This weekend. I felt like Maljol from Papio South and ETG was easily their best player this weekend.
He in their first game I watched against Southwest Iowa Impact, he had a double-double, 17 and 11, hit a 3, a couple of free throws, all over the offensive glass. He was really good in that game. And Connor Milken, game-winning layup with 5.5 seconds left. They kind of rallied late. They were down 4. JJ Farron hit a 3. They missed a free throw, and then they went down, and Connor went length of the court to score. So they were that close to not even getting out of their first game with a win, but they got it done and then got stronger, I think, throughout the weekend, despite being shorthanded. But like you said, they with ETG obviously same organization at that point. There's no reason to go 9-on-5 and in that championship game. So it's kind of disappointing. Would like to see it, but
yeah, I think if they're fully loaded, I would have loved to have seen that game. Right,
100%.
just because there's some good matchups and you know, similar styles, and getting a chance. We got to guard the perimeter, seeing if we made any progress after playing you guys, where you're so unselfish in terms of making the extra pass, and it's a handful. And so, you know, you get a JJ Farron and a Milliken, and you know, a Stuvie when he's shooting it well, or Trey Mosman when he's shooting it well. Like those are those things where it's like, oh, okay, is there a practical application of what we just saw playing you guys, where you space the floor and share the ball so well? Because I felt like even when you got rattled, you went through your stretch, you had double-digit turnovers, which ultimately I think sealed your fate. But I still liked your composure, right, for the most part.
And that's
your guys didn't back down either, right? There were some games played where you could kind of sense where people felt like they were overmatched before the tip even happened. I didn't get that sense from you.
And I think part of it, I had some guys on my team that are go to the same school with some of the kids on yours. So that's always fun when guys kind of get geared up to go at each other. And a couple, I mean, 2 guys in particular, Kevin Brown and Luke Davis, West Side Millward North, going against West Side Millward North guys. They were both fired up for that game, and those guys played really well.
I thought Kevin had another good weekend. So I was telling somebody this, and I'm not afraid to say this out loud, because I think the difference, Kevin Brown has been fantastic for you.
100%.
He's been fantastic for you all summer. And I think the difference is, and you know, I talked to Caleb and CJ and Kevin, his teammates, about this. When he feels empowered and that he's important, he's different. And I think you've empowered him to be that guy. I think he's comfortable in that role, being that guy, and he knows he's not looking over his shoulder.
That's
which is the biggest difference. But you can see that the talent is still there. And I think sometimes playing with, you know, with Kevin and Tate and Caleb and CJ, like, you're way kind of down on that options chart. So his game changes. He may just have to be a guy you let go and you let the chips fall where they may.
And I think you could definitely tell later in July, or June rather, as opposed to earlier, he was playing with more confidence. I think he did feel a little bit more of that early on. I think he was all these guys that played varsity before. I'm the new guy trying to break in here. He kind of deferred a little bit, wasn't super confident when he had the ball. I think he got better throughout the weekend. And like you said, he's been really good for me. And that's try to make kids confident, try to put them in good positions where they can have success and then build off that. And he's certainly done that. He had a really good weekend. Just some of the top performances from the 17s that I saw. Start with Zach Grandin for my team in our first game of the weekend. 25 points on 9 of 13 shooting, 5 of 7 from 3, 4 boards. Like, he was just phenomenal. Again, we were kind of getting off to a sluggish start in that game. We weren't really on the same page defensively like we normally are. And he carried us for stretches there when we needed it. Kid can really score the ball. It mentioned Maljal, the Anthony Simon for Hoffman's from Wahoo, another big game. He had 25 on 7 of 9 shooting.
He dealt us fits too.
Yeah.
We played him, I think, the second game, man, and he dealt us fits. He was finding ways to get to the 10. He's a good shooter. You know, a couple of coaches stopped over. I just happened to be talking to Coach Chubbuck, and we're watching this game, and he's like, man, who's this guy?
Yeah.
You know, because he's doing it against good competition. I I thought he was a handful all weekend.
Yeah.
Well, they got a good one there.
And I think, like I said, he had a 30-point game outside of any of the ones that I saw. Yeah. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy to keep an eye out for. And again, Wahoo's going to be loaded this year because right now, like that guy's coming off their bench.
How are you going to keep their scoring down?
It's just going to come down to decision making and if they share the ball well enough. But they've got all the pieces to be really, really good in that class. So that's kind of just overview of the 17s. It was a fun weekend. Again, I think your 16s playing up showed that they belong. They're one of the best, if not the best in the state. Again, I would have loved to see that championship game, but it's unfortunate. 16U division, we did get a championship. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep it in state this year. But overall, it was a good run for the 16s. OSA Adidas Gold, Pat Freeman's team. They had the lead kind of all the way through and just kind of let it slip away from them against All Iowa Attack in the final.
He does a good job.
Oh, yeah.
I like watching him kind of work. I just sometimes I'll watch in random game just because you hear about guys and you try to pit it. So the last couple of games I've seen him in June and now here in May and now July. He does a really good job with those guys. They maximize.
Well, and they had to kind of face the obstacle of losing their best player who moved up to your team with Alex Wilcoxon, and they kind of ran everything through him, especially like toward the end of the spring. Like he was just terrific. And so that's you lose a guy averaging 15 to 20 a game for you. That's going to dramatically change what you do. So they kind of had to figure some things out. They didn't have a dominant weekend, but they kept finding ways to win throughout the weekend. There's one or two games where they were in a tight battle with maybe a team that they were definitely better than, and eventually found a way to kind of pull it out. But then they scored a big win in the semifinals against Omaha Elite.
That's an athletic bunch.
Yeah, I'll talk about them in a minute. But Carter Mick, he's got to be that guy that steps up with Wilcoxon gone. And he did in the championship game, finished with 22. Got off to a great start. I think 16 in the first half, something like that. Nobody else was really going, and he's the one that kind of got them started early on and put them on his back. And he and Joey Veith, I think, had a really good weekend as well. I know he had, I think 20 and
just good to see him healthy for an extended period of time.
Yeah. And
it's been a tough summer on his body.
And I think he's been shooting the ball better recently than he did early in the spring. Had a good weekend. He had 12 in the championship game. They just couldn't quite get enough stops down the stretch and enough buckets to keep up with the attack team. But it was a close and it was a good championship game. And that's a good run for those guys. Again, it's a good team. Alec Wilkins as well on that team. I think those three that I mentioned are going to have to kind of carry the load.
You talk about playing hard. Boy, Wilkins, he leaves it out there, doesn't he?
Yep, no doubt. And it's a team with two really strong downhill left-hand drivers in Mick and Wilkins. And you don't got the scouting report, that can be tough. It can catch you off guard for sure.
Yeah, Mick, I know like the odds-on favorites. You know, Malachi Coleman, obviously. Guys like Jalen Lloyd. Carter Mick's going to put himself in the discussion for that next class for athletes of the year, right?
And especially next year when he's the
that's right, because he's
only junior. But yeah, it's really impressive what he's been doing on the baseball diamond, and then going directly from that to hooping on the weekends. He's a very good athlete. He's gonna be really, really good for them for the next 2 years in both baseball and basketball. I mentioned the Omaha Elite, who fell to OSA in the semifinals. I saw them play in the quarterfinal. And a guy that continues to get better and better, I think, is Quentin Mccafferty, the big guy from Omaha Concordia. Yeah. And from where he was 2 years ago when I first saw him, like, who is this giant kid coming off the bench to where he is now? Like he did not miss a shot. He scored.
People think they thought showcase, and they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
No, he was pretty good.
Scored 16, did not miss a shot, hit a 3. 3 blocks, 2 steals. He's a big dude, and he has continued to develop his skill level and his touch around the basket.
Gets along with others too. He was well received.
Yeah.
And I think that matters, right? When other players like root and cheer on your success, like he's one of those guys that people gravitated towards.
Yeah. And so you pair him with that backcourt, Delron Thomas and Minor Strong from Omaha North, and that's a good team there.
How crafty is Delron?
Yeah,
I just the subtle change of pace. He's developing that high basketball IQ. Well, and for him, I think it's going to be all about his shot selection.
Oh, 100%.
When he takes good shots and lets the game come to him, man, he is tough. Yeah. Right? It's like, because he can put it on the deck, but he's such a good shooter.
Yep.
And doesn't need a lot of time either. He can get it off.
Yep. And Omaha Elite beat Powerhouse Hoops Elite Brown in that pool game to advance to the quarterfinals to win that pool. Powerhouse had a good weekend overall, but they fell to attack in a close one. And then MBDA also had a good run this weekend. They ended up winning their pool in a tiebreaker because they all three beat each other. OSA Travis beat them. And watch out for Dylan Clausen.
So since the showcase, right, that's probably been one of the names where everybody wonders, it's either one of two things. Is this who he really is? And when's this gonna, how long can he keep this up? It's one of those two things, because he's had some performances.
Dylan Clausen from Omaha, from Creighton Prep.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
not Landon Clausen.
I thought you were talking about Clausen. Okay.
Yeah. Dylan Clausen, he played JV for them last year. He's playing for OSA Travis. 6'5", he's long, skilled.
As my son said yesterday at the dinner table, why doesn't he play more?
And he probably the best performance I've seen from. He's a kid that he's skilled, he's talented, but he's not super assertive all the time.
And he was getting his hands on balls defensively too.
It's going against Trayson Anderson, 6'9", D1 offer.
He gave him all he wanted.
18 and 9, shot the ball really well.
Sitting next to you for that one,
and he was going right at him.
Yeah,
too.
he was.
I talked to him after it. I was like, dude, you saw what you just did against that kid. Yeah. You bring this level of aggression in every game, you're going to be tough to stop.
Hey, showed some good footwork.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh. And Josh, it seems like Prep always has one or two of those guys that are coming from, their JV team, and they step in and it's like, oh, they've got a role. And I know that's the way that he kind of wants to build his program. So I hate to give him credit for that, but it's my guy. I can mess with him. But yeah, that's a good call, because I felt like he was a little overshadowed. And there was even a point where I wanted Trayson to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
I'm like, give it back.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's kind of, you want to see that. Yeah. He really stepped up.
And Trayson had 23 and 14 in that game.
How about him being able to use either shoulder?
Yeah.
He can turn over his right shoulder. He can turn over his left shoulder. That is tough for a guy that plays kind of like a true post. And he's very capable of just handling it on the blocks. Now, he's got range, but man, when it gets dumped down to him, he has got an array of moves.
And he's really aggressive on the offensive glass. And hey, he's 6'9". He knows that he's going to go get that ball if you don't do a great job of boxing him out. So he had a good weekend overall. I think those were probably most of the kind of the 16U standouts I had. So we did have a championship there. Last division there in the high school, it's the 15Us.
Yeah.
And
we saw good. You're sitting right next to me for that one too.
ETG and NRE going at it. And ETG ended up pulling out the win, close one. NRE led most of the way, and ETG made a furious rally down the stretch, got it to overtime.
That ETG 15s makes it hard on themselves sometimes, don't they?
They do, yes. Just, again, shot selection is such a big deal in summer basketball in particular. Like the teams that are able to generate the best looks and are typically the ones that are going to do well on a consistent basis. And that's why I always stress with my guys, we're not playing with the shot clock. Like, take all the time you need, work hard, wait for the right one, because we will get a good look if you guys are patient with it. And that's sometimes tough for kids to figure out. They think, I got the ball, I got to go make a play, as opposed to I got to make a play for somebody else. I got to give up the ball, make a hard cut, open up the driving lane, that type of deal.
It's always interesting to see, former teammates play against each other, like what's going to happen with BJ and Lazarick, who, one's playing for ETG, one's playing for NRE, and you got to a Southeast versus a Northeast, right? In terms of their Lincoln rosters, but two good guards that are very familiar with one another. Both are a handful.
Yeah, and ETG ended up so got that game to overtime and then dominated the overtime. It was 7-0, and NRE got tough looks every time down the floor, and that was the difference. ETG, they really stepped it up on defense, didn't give them anything easy, and then went down and converted on the other end. I think Reese Kircher hit a big three, the go-ahead three to kind of start overtime.
How impressed are you with Sam's ability to play a couple of different ways? He's not just a strong body, right? His ability to switch and guard different defenders and then get out and run, I think it's a pretty underappreciated thing he does. And like you told me, you don't just roll out of the rack and get 20 as a freshman.
No matter what. He goes to Thayer Central. Sam Sourdik is who we're talking about, and he had a really good high school season as a freshman. Kind of an undersized big that's continuing to kind of develop out the skill set, trying to transition to playing more on the perimeter. But man, he goes hard. He goes hard, and that is a really valuable skill to have if you're as strong as he is. He's got a really solid frame all over the offensive glass, some strong takes to the rim. I don't know that anybody individually played super great in that game on either side. Lazarick got off to a great start and then cooled off a little bit. But it was a tough game. Both teams defended. Like I said, there's some tough shots going up both ways, but in the end, ETG was able to pull it out. And so they made it out of the weekend undefeated. Although, again, in the semifinals, they had to basically do the same thing. They were down. It looked like it was over. It was double digits, I think, like 11 points, something like that, late in the second half. And they really turned it up and found a way to get out of there with a win.
Coach Runco has his hands full managing those personalities. Right? There's a lot of alphas on that team.
And credit to Tyson Idebody, hit some big free throws down the stretch.
Hey, he's pretty crafty. I felt like some of the early experience he got playing for Coach Simons in the summer league, he's playing varsity. I felt like that kind of helped him a little bit in terms of having to get your shots off at different angles in different ways. And he was pretty good on the offensive glass, where I think he can make some hay. He
was really good in their game against Southwest Iowa Impact that I watched. I had 20 and 10. 8 of 12 shooting, hit a 3, 5 offensive boards, like you mentioned.
He's very capable.
And he's a guy that I think is continuing to get better. He's got some older guys to battle with at Westside that I think will continue to make him better, with Kevin and some of those guys.
Yeah, and his older brother who he can get some games in with.
Good for him to go up against that kind of competition. I think that's what he needs. He's continuing to develop a skill set. And obviously he's got some good size at 15 already, already taller than his brother. So he's one to watch down the line. I think Reese Kircher did play, had a really nice all-around game in that. I thought he had a pretty good weekend handling the ball and making plays, and hit some tough shots. And we mentioned Lazarick Houston. He's kind of the leading guy for the NRA team, gets a lot of shots up. He can hit some tough ones, man. I watched them play against OSA Gold, Adidas Gold, and they didn't really have an answer for him early on, and kind of had to dig themselves out of a hole and couldn't quite get there. But he's a guy that can hit some tough shots, and we'll see kind of how he falls in that hierarchy at Northeast with some of the older guys around them, with Christian Wynn and Porter Basil and Jalen Lang and those guys. But he's definitely a young guy with some shot making ability.
So you were talking earlier, kind of off pod about games growing over the summer, and a couple of these guys that I think you're probably going to talk about are benefiting, isn't the word, flourishing without their usual backcourt suspects. So they're playing a little bit differently. Guys like Alex Wilcoxon, who is typically in that backcourt paired with Landon Pokorski. He's got a different role with his summer team. Has got an even more different role with ETG as he gets kind of, in essence, the call up. He's had a fantastic summer, man. He's unbelievable.
First game I watched, came in and scored 10 points off the bench almost immediately.
So I try not to. I think I do a pretty good job. Like when you're going with your stats and you're watching, I try not to talk as much. And you're writing and you're doing your thing and kind of taking it in and you're watching. And I hear you say out of my left ear, you're like, well, that was a quick 10 for Wilcoxon. And it didn't even dawn on me, but It was, right? I mean,
he had couple open threes, had a nice little pull up mid range, another little bucket. So yeah, he came in off the bench immediately. Like you said, he's a good fit for that team.
He's got those good, strong legs, man. He's more athletic than people give him credit for, and he's got a willingness to defend.
Yeah, and on that same team we were talking about, Caleb Benning. I think he, from where he was at the start of the spring, kind of he's in and out. He's obviously going football visits, still doing some of that stuff. He wasn't playing every game to where he is now. I think watching him throughout June and this weekend, he's, I think, really stepped it up offensively without CJ Mitchell. And I think that's the kind of guy where Caleb, you've got some other good guards there. Fine defending, getting the basket, rebounding, making plays for others. But with CJ gone, that's another guy that really puts pressure on the rim. And so you need somebody to step up. And Caleb, he was a handful for us. He played well in their first game I watched. And he was really good in June. He was scoring double figures almost every single game I saw for them down the stretch.
He shot it really well. And I think for him is sometimes he's just a little too unselfish. There are times where he should probably be a little bit more selfish. And he's learning now to be a two-way guy, where, because Westside's going to need him to score. They didn't a year ago. He's already become an elite level defender, right? He's going to get, he really makes it miserable on guards. Yeah. And I think managing that back and forth on both ends is new for him, and he's starting to kind of get it.
And I think he's doing a better job of under control, better drives to the rim, as opposed to, you know what, I'm just going to put my head down and go.
Yeah.
He's crafty a little bit here. He's doing a better job of attacking on balance, and when he's getting contact, it's still a shot that he can make, as opposed to just flying in there trying to get to the foul line.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference, I think, when like you always, when you're going to the basket, you always want to put up a shot that you can make, because you never know if you're going to get that call. Now he's just got to figure out how to stay off the ground a little bit. It seems like every time he attacks the basket, he ends up on the ground. But
that drives me crazy. That's for sure. I felt like we talked about Maul Joel, another guy that I felt like had a really good weekend. Grand Jeanette, a really good week. I guess in watching how, again, a guy that's playing kind of a different offensive style than he typically plays, Grand Jeanette gets buckets in a variety of different ways. I think sometimes he gets pigeonholed.
Yeah. Well, and for Millard West, he kind of has to play more of the point, just with what they have as a roster. They don't really have a true point guard on the team. It's kind of a lot of combo guards, a lot of two guards that are having to handle the ball for them. And so I don't know that he's super comfortable in that, but we try to kind of give him a mix of on ball, off ball. We run a lot of sets to get him some open looks from three. And what I was impressed with in that game, he struggled early on against you guys.
Yeah.
And I had to pull him multiple times just because he couldn't take care of the ball. And I talked to him. It's like, I said going in, like, hey, if you turn the ball over, I can't play in this game. Gave him another chance. He went in there, he figured things out. He had some big buckets in the second half when he needed it.
I liked him.
Loved the way he bounced back. And he took some tough shots in the game in our quarterfinal against Fremont D-League, coached by Tyler Craven. It's a good team. They gave us a really good battle as Wahoo, Ashland Greenwood kids there. And he couldn't get a shot to go down in the first half. Scored 11 in the second half, like 3 straight buckets when we really needed it. So he's a guy that can really, really score the ball. And I'm just happy for him that he's playing so well. Coming in, I didn't know he missed his entire junior year, basically, with a broken ankle. And he got cleared the week we started practice. So I had no expectations. Like, I knew I was going to take him back because he earned that last summer. I didn't know how well he was going to be able to play, just missing out on all that time. Shot 42% from 3 in the spring, efficient overall, like picked up like he had never missed time. So I'm proud of that kid. And he's a big part of our team for sure.
So the level of surprise was where for you this past weekend? Was it an individual game? Was it an outcome? Was it stylistically how you thought a team would play versus what you saw? Was there, I know for me what it was the 70-point win over OSA, which I did not see coming at all. That doesn't really need rehashing, but I was shocked at the way that game was played.
Yeah, against the Adidas Gold team in the quarterfinals there for the 17s. You're talking about there
against the ETG 16s.
Yeah, that was definitely tough.
Did you see that coming?
No, not necessarily. I know they were a little shorthanded this weekend. I know in their pool game against Team Factory, that was a really good battle down the stretch. And they just kind of went cold and couldn't get anything to go. So I know if that would kind of carry over.
Yeah,
to the next game,
they need a downhill element, kind of where you can kind of get something easy at the rim at some point.
Yeah, and both Elkhorn South kids have been that for stretches. I thought Jackson Mower Swan, he's been playing well for them. He played well when I watched him. Did a little bit of everything. That's kind of what he does get downhill. And Alec Noonan, if you can get him in the right spots, he's really good slasher.
A lot bigger physically than I remember him being. He's got a great frame.
But yeah, that's unfortunate. Sometimes things just don't go your way, and it's a tough matchup. And it's credit to them. They bounced back and won their consolation game there.
Yeah, they shook that one off in a hurry.
In double-digit game. So they didn't. It's pretty easy to just kind of shut it down after a loss like that, but they bounced back and ended the weekend on a high note. So that was good for them.
What about the ERE 15s? Is that team better than you thought? Because they played better than I thought.
So I've seen them all over the place. Like I've seen them a handful of times back down in Lincoln at the end of the spring. They played in that Prep Hoops tournament, and I saw them. OSA Adidas Gold beat them, and it was kind of back and forth. And OSA led early and then kind of let it go and then pulled away down the stretch. They came back and NRE beat both the TNE 14s playing up, who we know that's a very good team.
A good team. Half
that team was playing varsity this whole month. And then they beat OSA Gold and kind of it wasn't that close in the pool as well. So it's a team that I think has gotten better, starting to figure some things out. They've got a lot of pieces. It seems like their rotations a little different kind of every game, but a guy to watch out for is Trinell Parker on that team. Another Creighton Prep guy. I think he'll probably play JV this year, but he's a guy down the road.
How about going back to May? We said, is this the year that Coach Lukey's going to have to play young guards?
Yeah.
He might.
Yeah.
Not his thing, but he's got some good ones, some good young ones in the fold.
Typically does. We'll see kind of how all that shakes out. Obviously, it's got an almost entirely new team around Joey Rischel and PJ Newbo, who played well this weekend, I think, for Factory. But
yeah, he had a really good last game.
Yeah. So that's River Cities.
That'll do it. That's a lot in a little. We'll be back next week. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm Old DB. Don't you dare miss it. It's Nebraska Preps Postgame.